Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel and welcome to hell. What I mean by this is that Jante's Inferno is starting tomorrow actually. Today's the 5th, it starts tomorrow on the 6th. And if you haven't heard of this, it's a readathon hosted by Jan Agaton. This is a really fun readathon. I think last year was the first year she did it and it's just such a cool concept. It's based on the 9 circles of hell and like Dante's Inferno, and each prompt is based on one of the 9 circles, and the goal is to read your way from circle 9 all the way out of hell. It's so much fun. I really enjoyed it last year, and this year it's a little bit hectic for me because I'm moving in the middle of it. Really, actually, my partner is moving in the middle of it. He's moving a week earlier than I am, but I'm going to be helping him with that move. So kind of got a lot going on, but I still really wanted to try and participate, and because all my books are in boxes at the moment, they're all kind of stacked behind me, I'm going to be reading entirely ebooks for the readathon this year, which I'm hopeful will also help me kind of make some progress and hopefully participate more than I thought I could, just because I think ebooks are a little bit easier for me to fit in between other things anyway. So that's kind of what's going on. I'm really looking forward to this, and I thought today, since it's the 5th and it starts tomorrow, we could take a moment to take a look at the prompts and talk about how I'm hoping to prioritize things and hopefully strategize my way out of hell. So there are 9 prompts, one for each of the circles of hell, and the concept is that you can double up if it's a circle directly above where you are. So you start in the 9th circle and you could double up and do like the 9th and the 8th circle, or the 8th and the 7th, but you couldn't do the 9th and the 7th circle at the same time. So to try and get out of hell in a very short period of time with my weird schedule, I'm trying to double up as much as I can on circles that were next to each other. So starting at the top at circle number 9, the prompt is to portray your physical TBR. This one I'm not doubling up. I'm going to be listening to Haunt Sweet Home by Sarah Pinsker. I currently have this out from the library. It's a very short audiobook, like 4 hours, and it's a novella about a young woman who gets involved with her, I think her sister or her cousin's haunted house podcast, and the whole thing is kind of stage production basically. The sister's in charge of, or the main character I mean, is in charge of like setting up smoke machines and things like that to create the spooks and scares and such that they feature on the show. But during this one job, things actually start to happen that are not things that she has set up. And so it's like, is the house actually haunted? Is somebody else doing something behind the scenes? And I got the sense that it's also kind of about her coming into adulthood and like growing into her own, which I think is going to be really interesting. And I haven't heard any reviews of this one actually, so I'm curious to see how I'm going to feel about it. Then for circles 8 and 7, I am planning to double up. Circle 8 is a book with a dark cover, and circle 7 is a book with violence. And I'm going to be reading A Single Bright Candle's Flame by Cole McCade. This is book 9, I think, in the Criminal Intention series, which is like a slow burn romance, crime, police procedural series that I've been really enjoying. It's kind of like if Criminal Minds was a romance, and there were only 2 characters. Moving on, I'm also doubling up layers 6 and 7, or circles 6 and 7, with 6 being a hot pick, a book that's popular or trending, and did I say 6 and 7? I meant 6 and 5. Anyway, circle 5 is conflict in the synopsis intrigues you. And so for this one, or for these 2, I should say, I'm going to be reading A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett because I have an arc of this. This is the sequel to The Tainted Cup, which came out last year. I had an arc of that one as well. I absolutely loved it. And then I was delighted to find out I got pre-approved for the 2nd book as well. And I'm really excited to dive back into the series. This is a kind of Holmes and Watson-esque series set in a really unique fantasy world. And I absolutely love the first book, so excuse me, I apparently got a cough now. I really love the first book, and I'm really looking forward to diving into book 2. And I chose this one for hot pick in part because book 1, I think, was like 8th in the Goodreads Choice Awards for fantasy last year. So I feel like being within the top 10 means it's got to be fairly popular, and I feel like it works. And once again, doubling up for 4 and 3. 4 is a book you acquired recently, and 3 is food or beverage on the cover or in the title. And this is the only physical book I'm planning to read. I did leave this one out. This is The Service Berry by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I'm trying to read a nonfiction every month, so this is going to be my nonfiction for February, but this is about abundance and reciprocity in the natural world. I've heard fantastic things about this author's longer work, Braiding Sweetgrass, but something about the premise for this just really intrigued me, and I have read a few pages of it. I absolutely love the writing, and I'm really excited to read more of her thoughts on like reciprocity and exchange as a sort of resistance to capitalistic greed. Circle number 2 is to read a 5-star prediction, and I'm not doubling this one up. I also am not pulling from my 5-star predictions video that I did because all of those books are in boxes somewhere, except for A Drop of Corruption, which I already have on the list. So instead, I'm going to be picking up the Citadel of Weeping Pearls by Aliette de Bedard. I think this one could be a 5-star because I've given several of her other books 5 stars, and I'm pretty sure I almost always give her 4 or 5 stars. Finally, the very last prompt is the only one you can't double up. The last book you have to read to get out of hell, you have to read one more book. So the prompt is one more book, and I'm going to be reading The Sunshine Court by Nora Sakavic. This is the recent, I think 2024 release that was a follow-up to her All for the Game series. It's the 4th book. That was a trilogy for like 10 years, and all of a sudden she came out with a new book, and I thought I was free. I was finishing up book 3 of the series, and then she was like, surprise, here's another one. So I have actually got a physical copy of this, but I had it on ebook first, so I am just going to read the ebook because I can't find my physical copy at the moment. But I am looking forward to being free of the series, but also I'm curious to see where this last book is going to go, because the original trilogy is following Neil Jostin as he is dealing with, you know, college and life and sports and the whole being the son of a serial killer who works for the Yakuza. It's a whole thing. The whole series is a weird vibe, but this 4th book is actually following a different character that I was actually wanting to know more about in the original trilogy. We get this character named Jean who is introduced partway through, and we get a little bit of him in one of the books, in I think book 2 maybe, end of book 2, and I just wanted to know more about him. I thought he was an interesting character, so I'm interested to see where his story is going to go, because this is following him kind of at the end of the series, and yeah, ought to be an interesting time if nothing else. So those are the books I'm planning to read. I've got to go now, my battery is flashing, but I'll check back in with you tomorrow when the readathon actually starts, and hopefully I will have some initial thoughts, if not my final thoughts, for Haunt Sweet Home. Look at me actually sticking to a plan for once. I have actually started Haunt Sweet Home, although I'm checking in a little bit earlier than I intended to, because I'm about a third of the way through, and I feel like I'm having a lot of mixed feelings about this book. I'm gonna finish it, but I just wanted to kind of talk through what I was thinking so far, because I am feeling kind of torn on whether I'm enjoying the book or not. The one thing I do know is I'm not loving the audiobook, and I'll kind of come back to that later, but I want to clarify that earlier I said this book was about a woman getting involved with a podcast. It's actually a reality TV show, and it's a sort of HGTV home makeover kind of a thing, except that all of the houses are haunted. And it's following this young woman named Mara, who, I say young woman, I think she's kind of late 20s is the sense that I'm getting. We're not given a specific age for her, but she's kind of in her late 20s, and she comes from a family that is full of very ambitious, purposeful, purpose-driven people, and she doesn't feel like she fits in with them. She doesn't have like a specific thing that she wants to work towards. She doesn't feel like she knows who she is or what she wants to do with her life in the way that her family has. Her father is like a very accomplished musician, and her grandmother was a carver, and then her cousin is the host of this reality TV show, and that was what he always wanted to do, was he wanted to kind of be the center of attention. He became a model and an actor because he wanted to be like on camera, and that worked out for him. He pursued it and he succeeded. And she just feels like that doesn't match her experiences of life, and she's feeling kind of lost and frustrated. So that's kind of the background for her getting involved with the TV show, and then she gets involved as a production assistant helping with the night shift, basically trying to convince people that the house is haunted. And it's following her as, I'm guessing creepy things are going to happen. At a third of the way in, nothing has actually happened. All of the haunting has been stuff that Mara is doing to make the house look haunted. So it's been pretty slow development so far, and I feel like some of what we've been shown so far is also a little bit underdeveloped. I really wanted to see more of her family and more of her interacting with them, because we got a lot more monologue from her about her relationship with her family and less actual interaction between them. So what's happened so far is a little underdeveloped. I also feel like the audiobook isn't great, and I think that's maybe impacting my experience with it. The narrator is quite monotone, but in a sort of disaffected way, and the best way I can think of to describe it is almost like a teenager who's trying to seem cooler to like fit in with a specific friend group. It's this kind of like, well, I guess we can go to the mall if you want to, but like, I don't care kind of tone. And I really am finding it kind of grating and annoying, but also it makes it hard to understand what the narrator is saying at certain points, and it's hard to tell the different characters apart. So like Some of the characters, I don't even know what their names are because I cannot tell what the narrator is saying, and I've gone back and tried to slow it down. I've re-listened to it. I don't know what these characters' names are because I can't tell what the narrator is saying. But also, the characters all sound the same. So it really doesn't matter if I remember their names or not anyway, because I can never tell who's speaking. They all, except for Buzz, have basically the same voice and the same intonation. So everything just feels very one note and monotone in the audiobook, which I think is really impacting my enjoyment of the story itself. So I'm feeling torn because, like, those things, I feel like a lot of what I've just said sounds like I feel very negatively about the book. But I do really like the premise of the book. I think Mara is interesting as a character because she's a little bit older. She's not like middle-aged or anything, but she is kind of an older 20s, early 30s kind of character who really doesn't have a sense of what she wants to do. I think a lot of times when you follow characters in that age range, they're like in the midst of their career. They are, you know, partway there. They're mid-career level, or they're, you know, maybe they're starting a new job, but they have a sense of like where they're going and what they want to do. And that's just not the case for Mara. And I think that's making her a pretty interesting protagonist. And I'm interested to see how the book is going to grapple with that. What is she going to learn about herself through her involvement with this TV show? But at the moment, it's just feeling like it's not developing that quickly enough for the fact that it's a very short book. It's a novella, and I don't feel like we're getting a lot of new information at any given point. There's so far, it's just been her kind of working on this TV show. I think it's 2 nights so far have passed of her doing like specific tasks and kind of talking about the things that she's doing and why she's doing them. But that's been it so far. And I want more development of her story and less of the day-to-day routine stuff of the TV show, I guess is what it is. I also just want more of the like creepy aspects to happen, because I know that the description for this book says that creepy things start happening on set that they're not responsible for, that aren't things that the TV show is doing to make the house look haunted, and none of that has happened so far. I'm a third of the way through the book, so that's probably like, I think it's 150, 120 pages. It's not real long. Being a third of the way through and nothing is happening, I don't know. It just doesn't work for me in like a short format. I feel like if it was going to kind of develop in the way that it is, it needed to be longer. That said, I am curious to see what's going to happen in the last 2/3 of the book, and I'm hopeful that things will start to pick up. We'll get some more creepy elements, and I want to learn more about Mara. I also want to see how her relationship with one of the side characters named Andy is going to develop. I like Andy. She's one of the few characters that I can kind of tell apart from the others, just because of the snarky dialogue that she tends to get. But I want to know like how all of this is going to play out. So I'm going to go and try to listen to more of it. I've got to do some packing over the next little while, so I'll probably listen to more of it while I'm doing that, and hopefully I can get through this one fairly quickly. So we'll see. I'm just not sure if I'm going to end up enjoying this book or not. Well, I'm sad to say that I'm giving Haunt Sweet Home 2.5 stars. I'm really disappointed. It felt like a waste of a good premise, but my issues that I was having in the first third of the audiobook persisted throughout the rest, and some new issues kind of arose throughout the latter half of the story. I ultimately feel like it's just poorly paced, and I don't really get the connection between the horror elements and the theme that is being explored. Mara's kind of ultimate problem is that she sees everybody around her and thinks of them as like being somehow better at adulting than she is. They're more successful, they're better at what they do, they seem to have like a sense of purpose, and it's really, I think, that she's seeing the result of all of their efforts but not recognizing the like years of effort and hard work and failure that goes into reaching that point. So that's kind of the center of her growth throughout the story, is kind of recognizing that, but I don't think that she really does. We just end up at a point at the end where she's like, oh yeah, I have to work towards something, and that's kind of it. It didn't seem very well connected with the haunting. I think it's supposed to imply that she's haunted by like her own self-doubts and her own self-sabotage, but it didn't really work for me. I didn't see a good connection between those two pieces of the story. I felt like her conversations with her cousin in the latter part of the book did a lot more to further the themes of the story than the haunting did. I also felt like the haunting was kind of abrupt. We go from basically nothing happening to getting our first scare at like the 43 to 48% mark, somewhere in there, and then it just ramps up very quickly, and it feels very abrupt as a whole. And then there's also this very abrupt switch where Mara goes from kind of not really questioning what's happening to suddenly being like, well, obviously I'm being haunted, that's what's happening, and kind of moving on with that assumption. There's not really any kind of build of dread for her. There's not a moment where she kind of doubts that what is happening is happening. She just kind of goes, oh, well, I guess I'm being haunted. That's the thing. So it feels like the latter half is just really abrupt in kind of everything that happens. And there's moments where Mara does things that just don't really make any sense based on who we're led to believe she is. There's also these moments where she will pick like the worst possible moment to confront somebody about something, or she'll like pick up an issue that isn't really an issue at the time and suddenly want to talk about it. There's a couple of moments when she confronts her cousin in the latter half, and those are the moments when I think that you get the most clear like portrayal of the movement of the themes, which is that like she confronts her cousin, she's like, hey, why are you ignoring me? And he's like, I'm not. You've just been out every time I've tried to come and see you, and I didn't say hi to you one time because you were on a roof, and I didn't want to be responsible for you falling to your death. So, like, it's clear throughout that, like, everything that Mara's dealing with is really just in her head. She's making these assumptions. She has this kind of negative worldview that influences the way that she views others and her relationships with others. And I feel like that was much more interesting than anything that happened with the haunting. The haunting was just kind of boring. I think the explanation for the haunting was really silly and didn't really add anything to the story. I ultimately am giving this 2.5 stars because there were a few things I did like. There were some creepy descriptions that I thought were fun. I think the sentence level writing of the book is pretty good. Like the actual language that's being used, the way that things are described is pretty good. I liked the like flow of the writing, if that makes sense. I also liked those moments with her cousin Jeremy where she does get those kind of frank conversations with him, and he kind of lets her in on like the, hey, actually I put a lot of work and time and effort into this thing that I'm doing now. That those moments where she was actually actively talking to someone, I think made the difference for me in giving this 2.5 stars as opposed to giving it like 1.5 or 2 stars. Overall, I think it was just pretty boring, but it had these like few moments that I thought were pretty good. The other thing I want to mention is there's a bunch of stuff that just kind of like gets dropped and doesn't go anywhere. There's a thing when like a hot plate gets left on and that never comes back up again, and her relationships with her coworkers suddenly get dropped in the latter half. So it just was like inconsistent across the story. But yeah, like it wasn't a bad time. I didn't not enjoy listening to it, if that makes sense. Like it was fine to listen to while I was doing something tedious. It just wasn't, I think, as well plotted or paced as I would have liked. I think those are really the big issues that let it down. It's just the plotting and the pacing aren't great. So now that that's out of the way, I can move on to book number 2, which is going to be A Single Bright Candle's Flame by Cole McCade. This is book number 9. I think I've already said this, but book number 9 in Criminal Intentions. This one is following a traumatic event that happens to some of our characters at the end of book 8. There is an officer-involved shooting, and Malcolm and Songjay are kind of dealing with the aftermath of that, the emotional aftermath of that, and also, I believe Songjay's sister goes missing, so they're kind of investigating a mystery while also dealing with this kind of big emotional event, and I'm interested to see where this is going to go. It's pretty short, I should be able to get through it pretty quickly. I think the actual story piece is like 80 to 85 pages. So it should be a fairly fast read. I'm looking forward to it just because it's been a while since I've read anything in this series, and I do really love these characters, and I feel like Cole McCade does a great job of kind of exploring big topics through the like development of their relationship. So I'm having a good time with the series. I'm glad to be diving back into it, and I will check back in later, probably just with final thoughts because it's so short, and I don't know that there's a good way for me to talk about the 9th book in a series without spoiling something. I had a lot better time with Criminal Intentions book 9, A Single Bright Candle's Flame. I have finished it. It was very quick. The actual story was like 85-ish pages, and I really enjoyed it. I think this one reads a lot like a filler episode, so I am giving it 4 stars as opposed to 5. I think the structure is just a little bit odd and some of the emotional jumps are a little bit jarring because of that. Because this particular one is following up on a very traumatic event that happens at the end of book 8, where Song-jae has to do something that is now weighing on him, and he's kind of dealing with the emotional fallout of that. At the same time, there's this other thing happening in the background, and all of the Criminal Intentions books happen, or start with, I should say, like the death, whatever murder or whatever is going to be like the central mystery plot for that book. They always start with that. And so this one is the same. There's a like murder at the very start of the book, and that kicks off, but it's treated as a subplot, and so that happens, but it's not actually addressed across the core of the book. The middle part is just Song-jae dealing with this kind of emotional fallout, and then also his sister goes missing. And so he is like trying to take care of her. He's trying to find her and save her. And I will say that that resolves much faster than I would have expected. And really there isn't any mystery or high action in this particular entry in the series. It's really just Song-jae kind of initially being quite depressed over what's happened, and then having this thing with his sister kind of push him into action and kind of break him out of the depressive spell that he's in. I don't know that I love entirely how just like reconnecting with his sister seems to fix him. It doesn't really quite, because it's still kind of an ongoing question of like, can he continue to do his job well? Is he going to be okay? Is he going to be okay emotionally? Can he recover from the grief that he's feeling right now? Like, that's still an ongoing question, but he goes from being basically catatonic to pushed into very like intense action, and then he doesn't like fall back into being catatonic immediately or anything like that. He has this kind of more positive experience at the middle of the book, and then things are looking up for him at the end. So I feel like it's a little bit abrupt how that is handled, but overall I did really like the way that this book is talking about PTSD and like the effect that Song-jae's job has on him, and also the effect it's having on Malcolm, because Malcolm and him work together, so they both have this incredibly stressful job as homicide detectives, and they see horrible things all the time, and they can't save everybody. So it's kind of about how that job weighs on them, but also the importance that each of them feels in doing that job, and like the responsibility that they have to protect and help those who can't do the same for themselves. And so I really enjoyed those conversations in it, and I also liked how much of this book was about like family and the importance of having a support network and of being loved and allowing yourself to be loved. And I really enjoyed all of those kind of middle portions of the book. It's really sweet. It's got this very like silly tone through a lot of it, because his sister is quite like bubbly and cheerful, and yeah, it was a really like fun installment in the series. I just don't think it pushed the plot forward in any kind of meaningful way. In some ways I think it's necessary though, because of what happens at the end of book 8. There needs to be some resolution to that. It's just that this now feels like before we could have additional plot, we had to have this like little pause to deal with that emotional fallout and get the characters to a place where they are prepared to move on into the end of the season 1 arc, because this series is broken up as though it's like a TV show, so it's like in seasons. And so this is book 9. I think there's 13 in each season, so we're in like that last 4 books now. So I think it's kind of setting up for that arc. And then at the very end of this goes back to some stuff that's happening at the beginning, and we get more of that, and we get a really big cliffhanger at the end, which I like. It's a really emotionally intense cliffhanger. I don't think it hit me quite as hard just because it's been a while since I've read the series, so that was focusing more on some other people that are characters I really like, but they just aren't as present throughout this book, so they just kind of like pop up at the end. And so having not read the other books in the series as recently, that didn't hit quite as hard for me as I think it would have if I had come from book 8 like directly. So yeah, I had a really good time with this, giving it 4 stars. Glad that I finally am back in this series. Unfortunately, I am going to have to wait before I read any more of it for 2 reasons. One, I've canceled my Kindle Unlimited subscription just because I really want to focus on the books I already own on my shelves, and so I don't have access anymore to those. I was reading this one. I wanted to. I could maybe binge the last 4 in the next 2 days, but that seems like an unhealthy plan, and I also still need to pack, so I should not do that. And the other reason being that we need to move on to our 3rd book. Although I will say that having finished A Single Bright Candle's Flame, it means we've cleared circles 9, 8, and 7 of hell. So now we are moving on to layers 6 and 5, I think. I believe this is one I had doubled up. And the next thing I'm planning to read is A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. So I'm really looking forward to this. This is a sequel to a book I absolutely loved at the start of last year, which was a like fantasy murder mystery. It's kind of a Holmes and Watson thing, but in a fantasy world. And I just really enjoyed the world that Robert Jackson Bennett has put together in this series. It's really unique, and it's kind of a blend of science and fantasy. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen in this next volume and how things are going to play out for Din and Anna. Also, what are we going to learn now about the empire that they're living in? Because I feel like that was really central in the first book, was the kind of mechanics of the empire. And so it seems like we're probably going to be learning more about it, because I think there's a like specific government facility that is under threat during this second book. So I'm really looking forward to diving into this one. I think the actual plot is that somebody gets murdered, and it's like a locked room murder mystery, and it seems like Anna, who is the kind of Holmes character who has never really been outsmarted, is maybe getting outsmarted for once, and there is an enemy who is like several steps ahead of her, and I'm really curious to see how she's going to deal with that. So anyway, that's what we're diving into next. I'm not going to start it tonight, however. I'm probably going to read it over the weekend, because tonight I'm actually streaming on Twitch. I almost said twitching, and I'm like, that's not what that's called. Anyway, I'm gonna be streaming on Twitch. I'm playing Ghostwire Tokyo tonight. I've been playing that for the last few Fridays, and I've just been really enjoying that. I've been enjoying streaming. It's pretty new to me still. I've only been doing it for a couple of weeks, but I've really been enjoying it, and my partner has been helping me kind of get everything set up, and his friend group, his streaming friend group, have just been like so lovely and helpful and welcoming, and it's been a fun time. So I'm gonna be streaming for a little while this evening, playing some more Ghostwire Tokyo, because I love that game, and I'm probably gonna get a start on A Drop of Corruption tomorrow. Okay, so I'm not very far in, but I am immediately loving A Drop of Corruption again. I am enjoying so much being back in the world with these characters, and I'm really amused that the first chapter opens with Din getting smelled by somebody. They're like, oh, I thought you'd smell more expensive, and he's like, I'm sorry, question mark. So it's really funny. I'm having a great time, and I'm curious to find out more about the actual mystery, because that's the bit that I've just gotten to, is we're kind of finding out what the mystery they're going to be solving in this book is. So yeah, having a great time, having dived back into it. It's going to be a little bit before I can do much reading again, because I am back to packing. I've just finished packing all of my yarn. This is not where the box is. I forgot that I had moved it. It's out in the hallway. I have a giant green tub full of yarn. I'll put a picture in here somewhere, because I took a picture of all of the yarn in it. So I've been working on that. I am in that last little bit of time that I have to pack, because I have the rest of this week to pack, this weekend and this week. And then I'm going to be driving over to help my partner move into the townhome, and then the following weekend I move into the townhome. So I don't have a ton of time left to pack, and I'm kind of doing that like panic trying to get everything in boxes kind of thing. So that's where we're currently at, and we'll see how things go from here. It may take me a little bit to get through A Drop of Corruption, but I am just having a great time reading it again and being back in that world. So fingers crossed I can find some time around my packing to keep reading it. I'm like halfway through. This is one day, I think, since I last updated, but I'm halfway through A Drop of Corruption, and I'm having such a good time. It is so fun. I love Din and Anna so much, so I'm really excited to be back with these characters again. But also the mystery in this one is really fun. We have a sort of genius antagonist character who seems to be 4 steps ahead of everyone else at any given time. And there's also a really interesting political situation unfolding here. This particular book is set in Yarrow, which is a area that is really important to the Empire, because it's where all the reagents for their mutations and things come from, but it's also not officially an Imperial canton, so it's not actually a part of the Empire. It is both Empire and not Empire all at once, but it is approaching a time where a accord that was made like a century ago is about to turn it into an Imperial canton, and there are a lot of conflicting feelings about that particular change that's about to happen, and everything that's happening seems to be kind of centered on that central political conflict. I just said centered and central, that was silly. Anyway, seems to be kind of focused on that conflict, and it's unclear kind of who's behind everything and where things are headed. It's just clear that somehow this is a reaction or some sort of statement on this upcoming change to Yarrow's political status in regards to the Empire. So I'm really interested in that. I'm curious to see where this is going to go. I'm having a great time. I love these characters, particularly Anna. She's really mean, but she clearly cares so much about justice, and she cares a lot about Din as well. She's just kind of a dick about it, is the thing. And I really enjoy her. She's fun to read. She'll say something like really dramatic and formal and then top it off with saying something like, well, the fucker knows too much. And it's just really funny. And Din is a really great protagonist. He's always kind of like one step behind Anna, but he's still very smart in his own right. And he's very good at what he does. But he also has a lot of like emotional turmoil going on. He's got a lot of stuff going on in his personal life that is creating kind of internal conflict for him and making it harder for him to find value in the work that he's doing. So I'm really enjoying that conversation, and I'm so excited. I love this book so much. I love this series so much, and I'm curious to see how the mystery is going to turn out. I will say I've guessed a couple of the twists so far, but it has set up some things where I have like some theories, but I don't really know where things are going. So parts of it are a little bit predictable, but I think other parts of it are a lot more clever, and I'm enjoying seeing the way that everything is kind of unraveling. So yeah, hoping to finish this later this evening. I'm at like 51% right now, I think. So right about halfway. Hoping I can finish this evening, although I do also need to finish up some packing. I've got to pack some electronics out of my office and get those ready to go, because I'm going to take those over while I'm helping my partner move in to our new apartment, and then I'm going to take the rest of my stuff when I actually move in, when my furniture goes to the movers and all that stuff. So hopefully I can finish this evening, but I'm going to see how far I can get, and we'll see what happens. I have no idea if I'll actually manage to finish it, but if I do, that'll put me in a pretty good spot to read at least one more book for the readathon, which would be great. So I think that's kind of it for now, but I'll check back in with my final thoughts when I do finish A Drop of Corruption. I finished A Drop of Corruption about 30 minutes ago. It's fairly late in the evening. It's a little after 10:15-ish. So about 30-ish minutes ago I finished it, and I just had to think about it a little bit before I could give you my final thoughts, because I do have some thoughts, and I'm having to put the cover up here because I needed to charge my Kindle when I was done. But I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4.5 stars, I think. I really only have 2 small issues with the book, which were, one, that there were these vocal quirks that a bunch of characters were doing, and it didn't seem to be regional or associated with like a particular cultural background, and I felt like for a book that was so carefully discussing this like culture clash where the character's in a space that is imperial but not really the Empire in some ways, like it's not technically part of the Empire, but the Empire has a lot of ability to move freely through it. The fact that that was so much the core of the story, I found it really jarring that a bunch of characters who were all from like different backgrounds and had different like opinions on the whole thing all kept like speaking in very much the same way. I just found that a little bit jarring. And then the other thing was there were a couple of moments where the book repeated information as if it didn't quite trust the reader to have remembered it, but the information would have been presented like fairly close to when it was being repeated. So it just felt like there were a few moments where the book didn't quite trust that I was paying attention enough to remember some of the information it was giving me. And given the cleverness of the plot and the mystery and the way that everything else unfolds, that was also a little bit jarring. So those were really my only 2 complaints about the book overall. I loved this. I thought the mystery was really fun, and I liked the political aspect of it. It's very much a political mystery where we're dealing with, again, that kind of tension in a space that is imperial but not quite empire, and the like political conflict that is arising out of that situation, because that is also a status that is in the process of changing. So I found that that was really interesting. I liked the way the mystery tied into that piece. I liked the kind of cat and mouse aspect of it, because you actually find out like the name of the perpetrator fairly early on, but we don't learn a ton about like motives or how anything is done until fairly late. So I liked the kind of cat and mouse element. I liked the way that the different clues were presented, and I feel like one of the things that this series like really has as a strength is that it lays out the clues in front of you, and you can absolutely figure out what's going on for, I would say, like 98% of the twists. There were quite a few of them where I was like, I didn't quite get them right, but I was on the right track with my thinking, which I think makes a really satisfying mystery, that you can like kind of follow along with the logic of it and kind of figure out what the detectives are figuring out at the same time that they're doing it. So it's just really fun. I really love this series, and I don't want to tell you too much about the last half just because I don't want to get into spoiler territory. This is just a super fun series, and I highly recommend picking it up if you at all like fantasy murder mysteries, because I think these are particularly good versions of that. Also, if you like a kind of Holmes and Watson duo, I really like this version of them. I really love Anna and Din. They have very different personalities, but it's clear that their relationship, for all of its like quirkiness and Anna's eccentricities and Din's kind of almost like prudish nature in some ways, the ways that they clash, for all of that, there's like a very deep mutual respect and care that sits at the center of that, in the way that they interact with each other, in the way that they work together. And so I really like that, because I think that's really what's at the core of the kind of original Holmes and Watson duo, and I feel like this book gets that, and it's just really good. I also really like we get some new information about Anna that's really interesting, but sets up like even more questions, and we also get a couple of new things outside of that revelation that also kind of set up some more questions about Anna, like, you know, why is she in the Udex? Why does she care so much about her job? Why is she doing this? But also, like, how can she do the things that she can do? Because she's, like, creepy, but also, like, eccentric and brilliant and really, really good at her job. So it's kind of like, how and why is she here doing this? Why can she do these things that other people can't? Why is she so good at, you know, following that trail where other people miss things? So we get a lot of kind of questions around that and around her motives for being a part of the Udex. And I really like the ways that this book kind of gives us a little bit more information, but opens up some more mysteries on that. So it's clearly setting up that there could be more books in future. I really hope there are more books in this series, because I just love it. I love it so much. It's so much fun. So highly, highly recommend. And now we're out of, I think it's circle 5. So next up is circles 4 and 3 with the service berry. And unfortunately, I am going tomorrow to help my partner move. It is currently the 13th. No, sorry, it's currently the 12th. Tomorrow is the 13th, and I'm going over there to help pack the last bit of his stuff, and he's moving in on the 14th. We get the keys, we pay the rent, etc., etc. So it's going to be kind of limited reading time for the next little while, and I don't know that I'm going to take my camera with me. I don't think I'm going to have a whole lot of opportunity to film, so probably what I will do is I am going to take my book and my Kindle once it's done charging, so that if we have some downtime, I'll be able to sit and read. I know there's going to be at least one kind of trip out to go look at something. My partner's also kind of in need of a new car, so we might also be going out to look at a car he's kind of eyeing. And unfortunately it's not in the city we're going to be living in, it's kind of elsewhere, so there's going to be a bit of a car ride, and I probably won't be the one driving, so I may get a little bit of reading time then. There may also be some time in the evenings after we've kind of done our work for the day, and probably, like, his parents will want to rest, we'll want to rest, and you know, I may have some reading time then. But I'm very excited to get into this. I read a little piece of it and really enjoyed the writing in the first few pages, and I'm really intrigued by Robin Wall Kimmerer's ideas about abundance and like reciprocity as a kind of form of resistance. So I'm very excited to dive into this one and see more of her thoughts and ideas around this. So yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully, maybe I can get at least one more book read. I'm gonna take my Kindle in case I get the chance to read beyond this, but we'll see, and I will check back in with you guys at the end when I get back and give you kind of my final thoughts on anything I did manage to read, and we'll sum up and it'll be good. It's Monday, I'm back home, and I did not manage to read another book. We ended up being so busy over the weekend. It was pretty much non-stop until yesterday when we just got really tired and we sat around. We did a few things, set up the internet. What else did we do yesterday? I've now forgotten. We organized a few things, set up the internet, finished cleaning out the old apartment so that he could turn in the keys. Those kinds of small things, and then just pretty much collapsed for the rest of the day. So no additional reading was done, but that said, I'm pretty happy with the progress I made. 3 books is pretty good, and I believe that got us to out of the fifth circle, I think. Hang on, I'm pulling up my page here. Yeah, so we made it out of the 5th circle. That's a success, because I'm pretty sure I did not make it out of the 9th circle last year. So it's an improvement, and maybe next year I'll finally read my way out of hell. But that's it. I'm still pretty happy with the reading that I did. So I managed to read Haunt Sweet Home, which I think I gave 2.5 stars, A Single Bright Candle's Flame, which I gave 4 stars, and Drop of Corruption, which I gave 4.5 stars. So pretty good week of reading, and I'm hopeful that I can do even better next year. I did also start the Service Berry, so I'll probably finish that in the next few days. I just did not have the brain power to read it over the weekend. We were just so busy, and we ended up doing an extra thing too because my partner bought a new car. His old one had been giving him problems basically from day one, and finally it had what looked like an engine issue early on. It turned out to be okay with spark plugs. They replaced it, and he's like, I'm not driving this thing anymore. So stars kind of aligned. He found a car he was interested in. We all were able to travel down there, get the car, come back. So that was a success too, but it definitely made for a very, very busy weekend. And I'm gonna go work now because it's 8:13 on a Monday, and I've just been waiting for my computer to finish loading up. So that's pretty much all I have for you today. Let me know down in the comments below if you participated in Jante's Inferno and Jante's Inferno, and where you ended up getting if you participated. And I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I hope you consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!